the P-47 Thunderbolt, from mockery to dominance. April 8, 1943, 27,000 feet above Caen, France. German Oberleutnant Ralph Hermichin couldn't help but smile as he watched the ungainly silhouettes climbing toward his formation. Through the crystal-clear canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190, he keyed his radio. "The Americans have sent us flying milk bottles." Below, 16 P-47 Thunderbolts struggled upward, their engines straining against 7 tons of aircraft. To German eyes, these machines looked almost comical. Barrel-shaped fuselages, oversized canopies, wings that seemed too small. What Hermichin didn't know was that he was witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically destroy the Luftwaffe's fighter arm. Within 18 months, these flying milk bottles would transform from objects of ridicule into instruments of terror. This is the story of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. The accidental monster. June 1940. German fighters swept across France. Alexander Kartveli, Republic Aviation's chief designer, received urgent specifications from the U.S. Army Air Corps. They wanted a high-altitude interceptor capable of matching the Luftwaffe's best. What Kartveli designed was something entirely different. "It will be a dinosaur," Kartveli admitted to his design team, "but it will be a dinosaur with good proportions." The prototype that first flew on May 6, 1941, shocked everyone. At 9,900 pounds empty, it weighed 65% more than its predecessor. Test pilots invariably asked, "This thing actually flies?" Not only did it fly, it flew like nothing else. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp produced 2,000 horsepower and could maintain full power at 27,000 feet, where German fighters gasped for air. The turbo supercharger delivered sea-level performance in the stratosphere, but there was a price. The P-47 was enormous, heavy, and utterly unlike any fighter that had come before. Deadly learning curve. Major Hubert Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, initially despised the aircraft. Between September 1942 and January 1943, his unit lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft in training accidents. The P-47 killed more Americans in training than Germans would in the first months of combat. It ground-looped on landing, torque-rolled on takeoff, and dove with such enthusiasm that pilots discovered compressibility, their controls freezing as shock waves formed on the wings. But those who mastered it discovered something extraordinary. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, who would become one of America's top aces, described his first flight. "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." The question was, could this monster actually fight? First blood and first doubts. April and May 1943. The first combat encounters confirmed every German prejudice. The P-47s couldn't turn with the Focke-Wulfs, couldn't climb with the Messerschmitts, couldn't match their nimble handling. Hauptmann Joseph Pips Priller reported to headquarters, "The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow." In their first month, American fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts for only 3 confirmed kills. British pilots joked that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the roomy cockpit. The Germans were confident. The Americans were demoralized. But something strange was happening. The P-47s that were shot down had absorbed incredible punishment before falling. One aircraft returned with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have destroyed any other fighter. And when P-47s got their guns on target, the results were catastrophic. Everything was about to change. The day everything changed. June 26, 1943. Over Laval, France, Second Lieutenant Robert Johnson's formation was returning from escort duty when 16 Focke-Wulf 190s bounced them from above. Johnson's Thunderbolt, flying at the rear, was caught in the crossfire. 21 cannon shells exploded across his aircraft. The canopy shattered. Hydraulic fluid sprayed everywhere. The engine cowling tore away. Fire erupted behind the instrument panel. Johnson, wounded and bleeding, tried to bail out. The canopy was jammed. A cannon shell had welded it shut. He was trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet. What happened next would change everything. Despite having no forward visibility, a barely functioning engine, and controls that barely responded, Johnson managed to level the aircraft and point it toward England. Then a lone Focke-Wulf found him. The German pilot positioned himself and opened fire with everything he had. Johnson could only huddle behind his armor plate and pray. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire cannon ammunition load. The German repositioned, fired again with machine guns. Still it flew. He pulled alongside, staring in disbelief. Johnson could see his face, young, blonde, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. The German emptied his remaining ammunition into the Thunderbolt. Still, it flew. Finally, the German pilot shook his head, gave an informal salute, and peeled away. Perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of fear, perhaps simply out of ammunition and disbelief. Johnson's P-47 made it home. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. 3 of the 4 main structural spars were shot through, yet the aircraft had brought him home. News of Johnson's survival spread through both air forces like wildfire. For the Americans, it was proof their machine could take punishment. For the Germans, it was the first hint that something was terribly wrong with their assumptions. The tactical revolution. By July 1943, American pilots were learning the truth about their aircraft. Lieutenant Colonel Zemke discovered the secret. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight. Use your power. Use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight became a weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter in existence. Captain Walker Bud Mahurin developed what became known as boom and zoom. P-47 formations would climb to 30,000 feet, higher than German fighters could effectively operate. When Luftwaffe fighters appeared below, the Thunderbolts would roll inverted and dive. At the bottom of these dives, 850 caliber machine guns would speak. German pilots who survived described it as facing a wall of lead. Aircraft caught in this convergence didn't just fall, they disintegrated. The mathematics of destruction. Each P-47 carried 3,400 rounds, 425 per gun, nearly 900 pounds of ammunition, at 300 yards. All 8 guns converged in a zone roughly 6 feet in diameter. Anything in that zone faced 100 half-inch projectiles per second, each traveling at 2,900 feet per second. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski described the effect. When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they explode. I saw 109 literally cut in half. While German fighters carried cannon with maybe 200 rounds total, American pilots could maintain fire for over 30 seconds. In aerial combat, that was an eternity. The firepower advantage was becoming clear, but the real revelation was yet to come. The altitude advantage. September 1943. The Luftwaffe discovered another horrifying reality. The P-47's performance improved with altitude while German fighters suffocated. The turbo-supercharged engine maintained full power up to 30,000 feet. German fighters, with their mechanical superchargers, gasped above 25,000. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp was one of Germany's best, 206 victories, a veteran of every front. On October 8, 1943, he led his formation against B-17s at 28,000 feet. His Focke-Wulf was sluggish in the thin air. When P-47s dove from 32,000 feet, his fighters were helpless. Robert Johnson spotted Phillips' distinctive aircraft. His combat report was clinical. Opened fire at 300 yards. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. If one of Germany's best couldn't survive, what chance did anyone have? The report that reached Hermann Göring in November was sobering. The Thunderbolt's service ceiling exceeded 42,000 feet. Its dive speed approached the sound barrier. Its armor could stop anything the Luftwaffe had. Most disturbingly, it could absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. The sound of thunder. January 1944. A new variant arrived that completed the transformation. The P-47D-22 featured a massive paddle blade propeller, 13 feet in diameter. Where earlier Thunderbolts climbed at 2,200 feet per minute, these achieved 3,000, matching or exceeding German fighters. But it was the sound that terrified the Germans. The paddle blades, their tips reaching supersonic speeds, created a distinctive roar that could be heard for miles. A deep, threatening rumble that meant death from above. German ground troops could identify P-47s by sound alone. They called it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. Hauptmann Heinz Knock encountered the new variants in February. He wrote, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. They turned into us and climbed with us. Schmidt was caught and blown apart. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year." The laughter had stopped. Transformation to terror. Spring 1944. As P-51 Mustangs took over long-range escort, P-47s focused on ground attack. And this is where they became truly terrifying. The P-47 could carry 2,000-pound bombs and a 500-pounder, a bomb load equal to medium bombers. Add 10 5-inch rockets, each equivalent to a 105 artillery shell. Then add those 8 machine guns. Oberst Hans von Luck experienced it firsthand during the Normandy campaign. They came in so low you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. A column of 20 trucks simply ceased to exist in one pass. They were flying artillery with the accuracy of snipers. The psychological effect was devastating. Veterans who had faced Russian tanks without flinching developed what medics called Jabo fever, physical symptoms of stress when Thunderbolts were reported nearby. June 6, 1944, D-Day. Over 500 P-47s covered the invasion. The Luftwaffe sent fighters to contest the landings. They were massacred. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer was one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches. Thunderbolts were stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. 12 fighters from our grup. I was the only one to return. You couldn't climb over them, couldn't dive under them. In June alone, 9th Air Force Thunderbolts destroyed 651 locomotives, 3,800 trucks, 512 tanks. The Wehrmacht could only move at night. During the day, the sky belonged to the Thunderbolts. The industrial avalanche. Behind every tactical victory was an industrial advantage that German commanders couldn't comprehend. Republic Aviation produced over 15,000 P-47s during the war. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory completed 1 Thunderbolt every single hour, around the clock. Each aircraft required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, 2,000 pounds of aluminum. Yet American workers, many of them women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. Ammunition consumption exceeded 10 million rounds per month. The United States was producing more ammunition in a week than Germany produced in a month. Pilot training was equally overwhelming. The U.S. graduated 30,000 pilots annually, more than Germany trained in the entire war. Each P-47 pilot received 400 hours of training before combat. German pilots were entering combat with less than 100. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts arrived in September 1944. "I had 420 hours in my logbook. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight." This was the avalanche, not just better aircraft, better pilots, better training, better everything, and an endless supply of all of it. The confession. March 1945. Hauptmann Joseph Priller, the same pilot who had called P-47s pregnant cows in 1943, was interviewed by propaganda officials. His statement was deemed too demoralizing to publish. "The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. But beyond the machine is what it represents, unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20. We lose 1, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. They have fuel for training, ammunition for practice, spare parts for everything. We have nothing but courage. And courage without resources is just delayed defeat. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, death has come calling. The sound haunts us, mechanical, precise, unstoppable. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. The final statistics. The numbers tell the story of systematic destruction. 3,700 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,300 destroyed on the ground, 86,000 railway cars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 tanks, 68,000 trucks. The 9th Air Force alone flew 213,000 sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds. The Luftwaffe lost 28,000 pilots killed against Western forces. By war's end, the average German pilot had less than 30 hours of combat experience. The average P-47 pilot had over 200. The assessment files. At the Ober-Ursel Interrogation Center, German intelligence maintained files on Allied aircraft. The P-47 file, updated throughout the war, tells the story. April 1943, minimal threat. December 1943, significant threat above 25,000 feet. June 1944, critical threat at all altitudes. March 1945, unsurvivable in direct engagement. 4 lines, 2 years, complete reversal. Gallen's admission. 1985, Phoenix, Arizona. A reunion of German and American fighter pilots, former adversaries meeting in peace. General Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, was asked about the P-47. We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed. The Americans don't understand air combat, we said. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one, designed around production, firepower, and survivability. In a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. They were right. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. The controls were precise. It was a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a 2-ocean war. Each one required an engine more complex than anything Germany produced. Yet they built them faster than we could build simple fighters. That's when I knew we never had a chance. Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. 8 machine guns firing in sequence, like piano keys being struck. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it destroyed it. At the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, a restored P-47D sits among other legendary fighters. Next to it is a display case containing spent .50 caliber shells and gun camera film showing a Focke-Wulf 190 disintegrating under fire. Below is a quote from an unnamed German pilot taken from a 1945 interrogation. "We laughed when we first saw them. Fat, ugly American fighters that couldn't turn, couldn't climb, couldn't fight. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn or climb. They just pointed those guns at you and you ceased to exist. The laughter died with our comrades." The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision. It ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. In between, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns rewrote the rules of aerial warfare and buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of lead. German pilots had laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.